Hey, Bat Schools and Cryptids. Welcome to another episode of My Spooky Adventures. Recently, I have been seeing some postings on social media about filming locations for the sequel to 1988's Beetlejuice, and these filming locations were only 2 hours away from us here in New England, up in the state of Vermont. So we thought this would be a perfect opportunity to get some fresh air, go take a car ride, and revisit some of those memories that I had with the ghost with the most, Beetlejuice. So, without further ado, and as Beetlejuice would say, it's showtime.
So here we are at the Deets House right behind me. You can see they're currently working on construction for it. And this town is pretty wild. Like some of the video footage that you can see here it's a real tiny town, and they're not used to the kind of visitors they're getting right now, that's for sure. And the wild part too here, which you can see this other footage, is that the Deets House is literally built around a graveyard, a real graveyard, not like a fictional Hollywood one. There are graves everywhere, but that's not what matters in this video. What matters is my connection, my feelings, my vibe towards Beetlejuice. And having just rewatched it last night, it brought back a lot of memories. I've seen it multiple times, but last night just hit a little different, because I knew we were coming here today. The biggest pieces that I could get out of Beetlejuice go back to the fact that when the movie came out, I was about 12, 13 years old, and I wasn't quite into the whole goth spooky shit at that point. I absolutely loved horror and supernatural paranormal films, but there weren't films like that coming out, and I certainly wasn't somebody that was into the goth or dark subculture at that point. But the cool part is that Beetlejuice appealed to everybody. It was an average, normal, dual income without kids couple living in the countryside, this idyllic town that they lived in. And they met the afterlife. And further, they met everybody's favorite bioexorcist, Beetlejuice, who comes along to help them get rid of the humans living in their home. We all know the story, I'm sure, at this point. But my memories of the film, I have to say, it's a time when Tim Burton was not.
So I have to apologize here. We did have a few issues with both the camera filming and, unfortunately, based on the location we were at filming everything, there were a lot of flies that was harassing my wife while she was trying to shoot. That doesn't sound like it would be a big of an issue, but these were horse flies and they bite, so it was a little bit uncomfortable. We were also very hot. We had just hiked up a big hill to get to the filming spot we were at, and what footage that we were able to get didn't go over so well. But rest assured, what I spoke about, I'm going to repeat here and continue on sharing footage of what we were able to get while we were in this location. So this location is in a town called East Corinth, Vermont. And this is what they had filmed in originally back in the 80s. It's a very small town. There is a road one way in and one way out. There's maybe 4 or 5 storefronts total. A lot of farm community. It's very idyllic, very peaceful, very serene, and I can see why it was chosen as the filming location for Beetlejuice. And it looks like I have a visitor here while I'm trying to shoot. So we could see why this was a good spot to film, and we can also see that why the original movie chose to use the state of Connecticut, specifically a fictional town called Winter River, as the location for the Deets home when they were shooting it, because Connecticut, though it's not a neighboring state directly to Vermont, it's part of New England, but it throws off the scent for East Corinth for people like myself wandering in to go look at the town. Now, I can tell you what we did see of the town there. They did seem to be very welcoming and very open to having people in. However, there was no public parking, and where you were able to park was at least a good mile to a mile and a half to get from the parking space to where the downtown center was. My memories, though, of the movie Beetlejuice and Tim Burton, I was really kind of going about the idea that when the movie Beetlejuice came out, nobody really knew who Tim Burton was. You know, prior to Beetlejuice, he had only done Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which is really has the Burton imprint all over it. And that basically, you know, he didn't create or write Beetlejuice, but when the studio presented it to him, he really leaned into it and he added his own creative style and flair to it that would be repeated and seen again and again, and such that he became synonymous for with movies like Edward Scissorhands, Ed Wood, Nightmare Before Christmas, especially Sleepy Hollow, just to name a few. You know, you can see his signature touch with both the costumes, the characters, the creature designs that he used. And that really all kind of came forth like in films like Beetlejuice, especially the black and white striped costume looks that he would use again in other movies, which is what Beetlejuice's his suit looks like. The sandworms, you know, they're the giant creatures. He used a lot of stop motion in his production, which he would follow up again, making movies like Corpse Bride and Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach. You know, his worm creatures that also incorporated those black and white elements, that the striped elements that he would use again as well in those later films. So Beetlejuice really is like a way for Burton to showcase his love of B films and stop motion animation and the strange and unusual, and really bring it to a mainstream audience. And of course, as most Burton films are, he partnered up yet again with Danny Elfman from, at that point, was still really only known for Oingo Boingo, not really doing a lot of Hollywood theatrical scoring, which is what he does a lot of now. So it's really interesting looking at Beetlejuice as that is the impetus of where Burton starts out. What it makes it interesting, though, as well as with Beetlejuice, is the casting. You know, you had Alec Baldwin, who had really at that point was just starting out in Hollywood as a leading man. So he's young and fresh in this movie. Gina Davis, she had been all throughout the 90s, or well, the 80s at that point, doing mainly comedic leading actress type roles. And so she was really good here. And together as a couple, they really embodied that kind of wholesome, younger couple that didn't have any children, and they were just happy in their home being together. And then you had Catherine O'Hara, who had really been known for doing more comedic roles, character type roles that she would create. Very well known up in Canada, especially for Second City Television. And she was just kind of starting to get known more in the U.S., doing more U.S. acting roles. Of course, you could look at her character, if you're familiar with the show Schitt's Creek, of Moira Rose. That character really feels like Delia Deets from Beetlejuice if you fast forwarded that character, say, 30 years. So that's a really interesting take on it. So the relative newcomer to Beetlejuice was Winona Ryder, and she'd only been in one other movie prior to Beetlejuice, and that was the movie Lucas. She had a minor role in that film. And here, she was in kind of the standout. And for somebody of my generation, kids watching the film, she was the anchor to Beetlejuice. She was the relatable character. But at the same time, she was also very relatable to many of the kids that or young adults that were goth. She isn't explicitly labeled as a goth character, but you can look at her dress, her mannerisms, her interests. Today you might say like she's darkly inclined, but I would say like she definitely back in that era, minus hearing whatever music that she was normally listening to, you would say she was probably goth, or at least friends with goths, if she had any. Really feel like her character, I too am strange and unusual, that line from the film, I really feel like it resonated a lot with like the disaffected youth of that generation, and it has carried forward to generations after that. So finally, we come to Michael Keaton, the main character, Beetlejuice, and I really find his performance interesting here because he didn't really have much to do in the movie. Well, he had a lot to do, but he wasn't the main focus of the film. The film revolved around him, but you never really saw him. And prior to doing Beetlejuice, he had mainly been known for doing a lot of comedic roles. You know, he had done a few serious things, but he had mainly done mostly comedy. And the comedy he was doing was the everyday kind of guy, everyday Joe American, and not necessarily some kind of supernatural or a character performance. You know, he wasn't known for doing big character roles. So him doing Beetlejuice, you know, this was before Batman, which he would team up again with Tim Burton and do. Uh, you know, this was really a standout, iconic role for him to do. So, what of the sequel being made that they're shooting right now, doing their exterior shooting in Vermont? Not much is known. We know that Johnny Depp has a role in it. We know that newcomer Jenna Ortega has a role. If you're not familiar with her, and you probably are if you're watching this video, she played Wednesday Addams in the Netflix Wednesday series that was also produced by Tim Burton. So, as it goes with Burton, he likes to surround himself with a lot of the same performers. He's leaning in yet again to somebody that he's familiar with, that like this is his new muse, if you will. Also rounding out the cast, you have Monica Bellucci, who comes in and is currently, and this is not a spoiler, it's being listed that she's playing Beetlejuice's wife, and nothing further is known about it. Uh, Great actor, Willem Dafoe, he's joining the cast. He's in there as a supernatural or a paranormal police officer. I believe they use the term supernatural police officer or investigator. So it'll be interesting to see what he stirs up in this film. So, as of the recording of this video, they are currently just shooting some of the outdoor scenes in East Corinth, Vermont. And the signage that they had all over the city said that the roads were closed, like no public parking, all the way from July 9th all the way up until the 19th. And I could be mistaken. It might be the 16th. But it looks like they're only going to be there for about a week or two. And that seems to be about all that's left. So what was cool about this, about going there, is you can see that they've created some faux storefronts on top of existing structures that are there. But they also rebuilt the red bridge that was in the original movie, and that's where the main characters in the original film, their car crashes, they die, and now they're the ghosts needing Beetlejuice's help to perform a bioexorcism to get rid of the living people that are in their home. And that bridge, they had to recreate it because that bridge had been built upon to allow for dual traffic going in and out. Or originally, it was a one-way bridge. So there are two red bridges now in East Corinth, Vermont. I don't know if the newly created but original bridge is going to be removed after production is done, but it's still pretty neat to see that it's there. And it took us a second to realize that they had two bridges set up. For what we can see from the original film, the original movie in the downtown section had a hardware store that the main character played by Alec Baldwin goes into to buy paints and stuff for his little model that he's building of the town. And next door to that is a barber shop. So now that storefront has been replaced with a coffee shop called Rewind Roasters. And next door to that is some kind of pet grooming store. So the barber shop is now a pet grooming place, and the hardware store is now a coffee shop. Also of note, the school at the end of the first movie, Miss Shannon's School for Girls, that Winona Ryder's character goes to, that is still there, and that has been updated. There's a sign and plaque out front of it that says Miss Shannon's School for Girls, and the building has been fixed up, or at least exteriorly fixed up to allow for production to commence. There was also a statue or a full-size mannequin of Beetlejuice in the doorway of the school. We did not stop to go and look at the building further. I did get some information that that building is actually a Masonic temple or a Masonic lodge. And from when they're not filming, it doesn't look like it's been kept up very well. So at least Hollywood cleaned up the building a little bit for them. So we could only guess that this film takes place during Halloween time, which seems to be a really high point for Tim Burton, when he films, he really likes the holiday. He leans into it heavily, and of course, it's my favorite holiday, so I'm all for it. But the idea that this takes place during Halloween time was very abundant. We saw several homes that were people's homes that all had Halloween decor set up either on their lawn or in their windows. And then the streets, there were fake street lights that were set up that had these plastic Halloween pumpkin covers on them. So we're going to assume, based off of what we were seeing, that there's a sequence in the film that takes place during Halloween. So that's my take on Beetlejuice and my fond memories of it, and I'm excited to see what they do with this. It was very, very much a big treat to get to go up to East Corinth, Vermont. It was about 2 hours for us. It was beautiful countryside going, lots of mountains and rivers and streams, and you just can't imagine. It was so full of greenery and so beautiful. It was definitely a trip that I won't forget, and I'll probably go back and visit it again at some point when they're done filming, just to see how it all ended up afterwards. But I hope you enjoyed this brief video on it and some of the footage we were able to capture. Would love to hear your comments, your thoughts, and feedback below. Please go ahead and click subscribe, like the video, and as always, keep it spooky.